about it's about 2 years ago now. I was asked to submit my entry into a video that Absolute Sublime does on Halloween, basically talking about the horror movie that scares you. It's not that really kind of freaks you out. And at the time, I remember I talked about Terror Train, which is one of those movies that scared me, and I explained why at the time. And if you see many of my videos, then you probably hear me talk about it, the fact that I couldn't watch the movie because my mom sent me to bed, and my room was right next to the to where the movie was at. The TV was actually leaned up pretty much against the wall that the room that I slept in, so I could hear the whole thing. And I had this insanely horrifying movie made up in my head that was way worse than anything once I actually saw the film. But still, because I'd seen like little snippets, little like images from like box covers, VHS box covers and stuff, that movie for years, just even talking about or seeing the visual image that was on the box cover would scare the hell out of me. And people would watch the movie who hadn't had that experience and weren't so, how does this scare you? Which got me to thinking tonight about fear itself and how different types of fear uh, resonates with some people and don't with others. So tonight, I decided to take a little bit of a different approach with this one here and basically talk about some horror films, some horror cinema, and break it down into types of fear that I think may hit, which ones hit you. Basically, you tell me which, comment section down below. That's what that's for. You tell me what scares you and why it scares you. What I'm going to talk about tonight is I've got my better half Hind here. So say hi.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about together. She's the voice off the screen, the devil's advocate. And we talk about different types of fear. We're going to be talking about how different types of fear work in cinema and how they may play off of certain segments of a population and may not play off of other segments. And just basically at the end of the day, what scares you? I'm going to come right back and we're going to delve into that just a little bit deeper. Hey there, so we're back and getting into this. Actually, going to let I'm going to let him talk first and basically uh, answer the question, like basically, what is fear?
So fear is an emotion of dread that every human being feels about a particular situation. Um, I guess it started as a survival mechanism that we had in us to trigger survival mode.
Or Spidey sense?
Pretty much, yes. So you can go back as the dawn of humanity, where you needed to fear in order to survive. Your spidey sense would tell you that there's danger.
Yeah, don't go in the dark alley. Don't touch the
Even
stove
before
that's
that,
hot.
there's a
Don't touch
wild
the fire.
animal. There's a wild animal that's going to chase you and eat you, so you have to run. So it started very early on. We've carried that with us as modern times kept, coming in, and we were a little bit more safe. We started, I guess, to create this unconscious fear of things around us. We are no longer fearing the wild animals because we killed them all or put them in a zoo. But it's morphed into something else, more modern fear.
Well, yeah, for a while, and depend on like the decade or the time that you're going through, there would be a part where we kind of like internalize that, and where the thing that we feared most at a certain point was looking in the mirror, and
Well, think about it. So, we moved from actually fearing things, you know,
fearing
that could
ourselves, fearing
kill
technology.
us, but no, we somehow thought that this emotion was worth experiencing outside of a real danger, and we started putting it into different mediums to trigger that emotion in us. So, before even cinema came in, there were other ways
Not great, good, yeah.
of scaring us. So, from, going to plays to, entertainment basically very early on, the early forms of entertainment still had this element of triggering fear in us. So it is a very important emotion.
And we do it for, yeah, we paid to be scared.
Yes, we
You,
did, and we did that since again the dawn of time.
I don't know
So,
if we paid to get like eaten by
well, yes,
animals
I'm
back
pretty
in the dawn
sure the
of time.
people who were in Colosseum, paid to actually be scared that somebody else was getting eaten by a lion.
But,
Uh,
well, that's the thing. We pay that so we it's a safety thing. I mean, like that's like at the when you get on a roller coaster, it's the most for some of us, it's the most frightening thing in the world. But once it stops, you just there's this rush. There's
so
this
would
like
it be interesting to say that we started with having this fear, which is a survival thing, and then we tamed that fear and started exploiting it to our advantage because we need to keep on our toes and keep scaring ourselves in a safe environment in order to keep that edge for maybe a time where we would need that moment.
a survival instinct.
Exactly. So did we move from not controlling this emotion to you know trying to find ways to control it and use it as a survival thing? So it is very interesting to see that
Well,
we've been doing that.
I think right now is actually a great time to talk about fear, not just in film but in society itself, because we've gotten to a point, and if you want to look at something like that's topical, and without getting too political, because I don't want to, is the fact that the uh, the election that's going on now in the in the in the United States is, I think, being ran by a large part, especially by one side, and that's about as far into it as I'm going to
Yeah,
get.
but that's something
Being ran
that
on fear.
yeah, that's exploiting fear is has always existed too. This is not a new thing. It's not, especially not in politics.
Oh my God,
People
no!
have done that
Since
for
it's not even
forever.
politics has existed.
Every regime has used some form of
There's
you
always
know
been a bad guy, so whether it's been the Cold War, or the terrorists of
everywhere,
the day, to
everywhere.
like back in the, there was always someone, and on both sides there's always been something, like when when the when North America were making like propaganda anti-Nazi films, Germany at the time were making like anti, like
And
yeah,
you can go back even before that. Every regime and every culture and every community has created has used fear to their advantage. So it is also a very important weapon that can be used to maybe influence the masses towards a common enemy or a common goal. So and we've been doing that quite a bit. So again, it just shows that this topic of fear is very important because it can be harnessed, as an emotion to keep us on our toes, for survival
yeah,
as individuals or maybe as a species, but also it can be used in the wrong hands. It can be used to influence history, and we've seen that not just in the Western world, but everywhere else and throughout time. That, again, it can be used when it is controlled and manipulated the right way or the wrong way. It could, um, influence uh, our history and has done that. But we're talking about movies, right?
exactly, and that's where we should get back to before, like we get too like
So
psychologically.
we talked about that a little earlier.
We did. We were actually discussing it before we came on here, obviously, or this video would not. This just didn't come out of nowhere. Um, so we talked about like types of fear that we see prevalent in a lot of cinema, And I think the first one, the most obvious one that we go with,
Well,
is
yeah, when you think about it, see, you
that's,
mentioned it earlier. You said that we're not, um, we don't, um, I guess, react to fear the same way. Depending on what our personal experiences are, our childhood, our tolerance, our personalities, all of that shapes the way we might react to fear. There's the
well,
instinctive.
well, I think when it comes to like our fears, like just if you want to go and just take a basic like phrase that can actually like it takes a village to raise a child, and the way that you're raised, what your belief systems that you're brought up with, the society around you, the area that you live in, those are the things that are going to determine what scares you. I have certain things that frighten me, and like I'm sure like as like you have certain things that frighten and just disturb you. Like as you're as a pet owner, you can't watch like animals get hurt in a film at all. I have to like scan that
Mhm.
for you ahead of time because that's something that doesn't just like scare you. It shakes you
Yeah, it
to your
bothers me.
core. Like just it
Yes,
really bothers
I
you,
don't want to see
and
that.
that's when it gets to the point where it's like too uncomfortable. So when you're watching something, when you're getting this here, it has like some people go into the extremes that I don't find scary, and that I don't think that I won't talk about too much because I don't think that type of film deserves attention as much, and because I don't like them. But the we're trying to be scary and intense and brutal, and we're not type things.
So, but that's actually a good point because we're talking, we're trying to distinguish between two things: the actual fear,
Yeah.
being scared of something, so that dreadful,
Mm.
you feel, or the other types too. It's just like that feeling of dread when you watch something, but it's you're still it's still
Tension
it's
mounts
a
inside you.
healthy type of scare, and that's the reason why people go see horror movies and so on.
Yeah.
They're still uncomfortable, they're still bothered, um, but there's a limit, and then there are what we might not be talking about too much in this movie because in this video because it's not I don't think it's the topic is when um, is a type of horror that tries, which is also a type of horror. It's the shock, horror for shock value.
No, I like horror for shock.
Uh,
Yeah. And there's many great like examples when you think like of the shock, like the great shock horror. There's guys like Herschel Gordon Lewis who just recently passed away. He did like 2000 Maniacs and Go Go Girls Buck to Blood. Amazing arrow set. I need to get that down the road. Anyway, and but when I think of like manipulative style, which I don't think of him as, I think of like stuff like that just bothers me on like on different levels. Uh, the one noteness of the human centipede, uh, like how it tries, what it does to try to scare you, and even like in a more so of an aspect, the Serbian film, which tries to play it off as a political, you know, allegory, and it may be.
in their own right, and you know how I feel about these movies.
Yeah,
I
you're not
have
a fan.
absolutely, I'm not a fan at all, and all that. In their own rights, they do speak. For us, they're not scary. They're just, to me, they're not interesting. They're not worth it. And I think that's the thing. So when I look at being scared, because it's a conscious decision to go and actually put that DVD on and watch it and spend
Yeah.
an hour and a half being feeling not good frankly
But like,
your body is reacting and all that, so you're making the conscious decision to do that. Same thing when you go into a scary ride.
yeah, it's a neat.
It's you're going into it, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you know that you're going to get a high out of it at the end that's going to make the whole experience worth it. In my personal opinion of these movies that you mentioned, and there are others out there,
Yeah.
I don't feel that it is actually worth my time to feel dread, because at the end of it I will not feel that payoff, that high. that I get from getting in a scary ride, and you know that adrenaline rush that you get, I know I'm not going to get it. So it's going to be a bad experience for a bad experience, and that's that.
I think for a lot of it, when you think about like horror and watching and with cinema, that there's different ways to experience. I mean, like nowadays we've got like there's 50, 100-inch television sets, and you're at your home and you can turn it on at any time, type of thing, and it's a completely different experience than say if you're out watching in the theater with an audience.
But see, yes, I agree with you. But in the case, like, so that we don't talk about Human Centipede and the Serbian film. I just want to explain the reason why because these movies are not scaring me, or maybe they might scare me, but I'm not getting the whole point of watching a horror movie out of them, which is at the end you're like, ah, well, that was scary, but it was good, and you're actually there's an excitement and an adrenaline rush,
For some
and
people,
your body is reacting to it. It doesn't do it for me. Maybe it does it for somebody else, and they can make a video about that.
yeah,
But
it's no, it's about
that's not. So there is a limit, I think, to everybody's, you know,
oh,
horror fandom, and to me, and I don't pretend to be a horror fan.
yeah.
I don't pretend, but when we talk of the topic for what my tolerance, would accept, these movies are not even a part of it.
No.
Because I know for a fact that it is not something that would be at all pleasant in any way or shape. So again, the emotion is pretty straightforward when you watch a horror movie. You go into it knowing you're excited, knowing that you're going to be scared. You get scared. There's a release. Your endorphin levels are high. You come out excited. That's pretty much what happens when you get scared, whether it's a horror movie or you get into a ride or any of these things. Certain movies are flat, as in you go in, you're scared, and you're scared,
Or you're bored,
and
or you're repulsed.
well, that's part of it. Is that it's flat. There's no payoff at the end, and that's what these movies do. So we're not going to mention them, although we have mentioned them.
Okay, yeah, we take enough time on them. But let's get into the types of fear.
Okay, so the first one that you mentioned was
The jump scare.
Yes, everybody jumps. Everybody jumps. Right? When somebody comes behind a door and jumps,
Jump
you jump.
scares are hard. They're hard to do right, and because there's two types. There's the cheap jump scare. There's the all of a sudden you're walking back and you're banging somebody. A cat jumps through the window. Friday the 13th Part 2. Laurie bumps into the officer, and he turns around and basically he says, I guess it's Halloween. Everybody is entitled to one good scare. Those are classic movies, by the way, that did some very cheap jump scares. Halloween's pretty famous for it, actually. There's a lot of like cinema, that type of cinema that goes with a slasher film genre, which I love so much, does a ton of cheap jump scares, but it's part of the trope of that. But there's also the really, really good, really like intense jump scares that kind of move the story along, and those you find more, not so much in a slasher film, but you find more in a ghost story. That's when you find. That's why when you see stuff like The Conjuring, and movies like that, not Annabelle, that one sucked. But when you see these things like The Conjuring, and things like Insidious, or Sinister, the scares that are in it aren't. Oh, look, that's happened. No, each one of the scares, the jump scares, and some of them are so subtle that you don't see them the first time you watch the film. That each one as a payoff that leads into something else. One of the classic ones, the modern ones, is when you're watching Insidious, and Patrick Wilson is sitting down at a kitchen table. He's talking to a psychic. Everything seems normal. They're having a conversation about and it's getting to the point where you're finding out that it wasn't the house that's haunted. spoiler alert, his son is haunted, and it gets more into it. But it's kind of, you see this like this conversation back and forth, and suddenly uh, we see what the psychic sees and what the psychic has been seeing for a while, which hasn't been like shown to us right away. And there's this creepy looking Darth Maulish type creature right behind them. And I'm not gonna lie, I jumped out of my seat watching that sequence. Same with The Conjuring. There's a scene in it where the ghost kind of jumps downwards, and it's played up. It's paced so well that when it happens, I literally, and she can attest to this one, scream bloody murder when the sequence happened, because she was upstairs. We lived in a different apartment then. We lived actually downstairs in a kind of split level. But this is a split level. I'm watching it at night by myself. It's one of those like, and I kept away from the whole aspect of like knowing what was going to happen. That got me. Ghost stories get me, and why? Well, there's many personal reasons. Because one, I believe in that. It's a belief system, and it's
Well, you're jumping the gun because
uh,
I'll tell you that. Still talking about jump scares.
yeah.
I jump at all of them. The
You know,
cheap ones, the bad ones, the good ones. Um, boo. I jump. So do you think?
but that's good. I mean, like as me, somebody is a jaded horror watcher like me, loves to watch horror movies with somebody like you. I remember a good friend of mine doesn't live around here anymore. We used to work together. Kelly, remember Kelly? So we're watching like a movie, and I was like sitting right here, like right where Hind is at, basically, and she was right next to like where the TV is at, like basically we can see my shameless ones. She was sitting right there, and it was just a simple movie. I think it was a Stephen King. I'm not sure what it was, but we're watching it, and she literally jumped back so far that she hit her head hit me. She jumped right out of her seat, and that hurt. But it is awesome to watch movies with people like you guys that really get jump scares. That's a good thing.
So they're worth it.
Oh yeah, it's worth it because that's part of the ride. That's part of the whole ride. That's the thrill of it. They're still worth it. And there are people that'll say, and they'll bemoan the fact that the jump scares overused. And yes, sure, but it's there for a reason. There's a segment of the population that even the cheap ones, they're going to scare them, uh, and it works. Does that mean that we have to like rely on it and that's anything? No. Well, I think when people say that or think that we're relying too much on a certain type of scare, usually those people aren't watching the whole encompass of horror that's there, because there's a lot of horror. I come from the '80s. I was born in the '70s, raised in the '80s type thing, and there's a kind of thing that I'm gonna say it's a myth. I really think it's a myth, actually. To say, oh, there's so many horror movies that came out, and then all of a sudden horror movies died off, and then in the '90s, Scream came along, and the horror movies were popular again. Maybe the popularity part of it seemed to have died off, but if you actually go back and look in those years, there were horror movies still being made. It's just they weren't as big in the populace at the time. Like certain other things became popular, but that didn't mean that horror movies had stopped being made. No, there's some great stuff that was being made, and some not great stuff around that time. But still, the volume was there because it was a video age, and we really needed that volume. That's what got everybody into in there in the first place. But that's kind of like getting away from the topic. Uh,
Well, to conclude, I think for jump scares, and I'll tell you why I don't mind them. Being someone who, um, I wouldn't say that I am the biggest horror fan. I do recognize the importance of the genre. I absolutely recognize the need for the genre for, you know, many reasons. I think it's very healthy, and it's a snapshot on each decade, not only decade, but also you look at horror and how it is, horror in a medium,
well,
and how it is expressed in different cultures through the decades, and you can actually pick what's going on. It is a bit of a pulse on societies.
It is. I mean, like any time that
So
you
it is
can go through
important.
any like horror cinema and just pick the decade, the era that it came from, and you look at what's going on at that time.
It is a pulse. It really tells you of, it is the
And
expression of what's happening
and
at
to
the
be
time.
honest, more so than any other type of genre out there. Uh,
Well, subgenres. I think in
we
any
can't sell.
medium.
Well, we can't call horror subgenres. Horror itself would be a genre. There's different subgenres of horror, but horror itself is the genre. With like slashers, subgenre of horror. Like we've got the religious type horror. That's a subgenre of horror. We have like different types of like the
Yeah, but I still think
home
that the
invasion.
things that are not mainstream usually are what shows it. I would put science fiction, for example, as another type of anything that actually.
But do you think science fiction is really on the pulse of what's going on at the time, or it's looking towards the future? What?
That's a different conversation, but I would tell you that it actually is a metaphor of what the feeling is at that moment,
Like,
because it is so far fetched and so put in the future that it actually is a good way
oh,
for
somewhat.
anybody to express the actual
Well, we'll talk about that sometime, some other time, and actually get into like the whole G. Roddenberry Star Trek. Now that like was really
whatever.
pulse.
Yes. Moving on. So the jump scares to me is a safe way, because one of the things too that when we talk about horror movies is the pacing of a movie. When you are a fan, and maybe a jaded fan of the genre like you are looking at how things are paced, and you want it to be condensed, uh, fear. So things have to be pretty much all the time going in, and that you shouldn't be dropping the ball on the dread that you would feel then. For people like me, and again, this is my personal feeling and opinion, I cannot be in a movie for 90 minutes where it is continuous scare. I need, so the jump scare is a cheap but maybe good way for people who are not into having a heart attack for 90 minutes,
Well, I don't think that.
and just having a mini heart attack here, and then it's all fine and good and nothing is happening, and then another mini heart attack there, and because it cuts down from that.
But the best horror films do that because you can't maintain 90 minutes of like pure adrenaline, boo boo boo,
Some,
because it's not gonna. No,
but no,
because
but they
one.
might not use boo, but they might use other things that we're talking about, and we're going to talk about some of that. So jump scares are used not only in horror but in other formats or genres as just that moment to wake you up, to actually remind you, hey, you're sitting in a horror movie, or in this movie, and it is scary, as opposed to full horror that we'll talk about other types of fear implementations in movies that are pretty much throughout. So it's a good way, I think, to just give you a little taste of it, as opposed to killing you for the whole
So when you think of jump
hour.
scares, what in cinema, in movies, in horror films, for you that you've seen, because you have seen, it's not like you haven't watched horror films. Does anything stand out? Does any movie stand out? Any like for that's an example of jump scare, something that
Um, no, I don't know. Like, well, what movie, what horror movies have I watched?
well, you watch
um,
movies even
no,
for
I
like
did, but it's just I'm trying to think. Um,
I mentioned like off camera, and I'll give her like a minute to think about it, and I'll just say a couple examples from me. One of the biggest jump scares that really affected me when I was younger. I remember when I saw when I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time, and that there's a lot of scares in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and but for me anyway, but the biggest one throughout the entire film, there's one that affected me more than any other one, and so you've got like Marilyn Burns' character, and she's with her annoying like I think it's her brother, and he's in the wheelchair, and he's the most annoying character in cinema. Uh, right up there with the little boy from the House by the Cemetery. So they're walking. It's late at night. And there's all this like these big like grass, like long grass, and he jumps up. Leatherface is there, and he's right in their face, and he's right in your face, and that terrified me. That was like for me, that was like one of the biggest scares that I ever got, and it affected me for years. And when I'd see that, and I met the late Gunnar Hansen, who was such a nice teddy bear of a man, but still that mask, and still I can't separate. I can see I'm not. I would never be scared of Gunnar as a person, but I was definitely scared of that character in that film. And even to this day, when I still watch the film, I got out there that big case thing. That scene, when I know it's coming, I tense up. I know it. I know that jump scare is coming. I know when it's coming, and I tense. And I don't untense right away. It's over. And there's certain movies that I like. I want to look away, but I know I can't look away because it's an important part of the film, and I know I need to see it to get over it. But I don't get over it because the next time I watch it, I get the exact same tense feeling again. Then I'm like, oh, thank God, okay, that scene's over with. Let's go on to the next. I can take the rest of it. Do you have one?
I don't particularly have one. They simply all affect me. Like even the cheapest one, even
But
when I
you
know
can't.
they're
There's none
coming,
you can think of. I mean, like,
that stand out. Not really, because I get jump scares in TV shows affect me. So
but like Carrie, like which is probably one of the most famous. It's the ending sequence there, or Friday the 13th, with the jumping up from the boat. Like I guess Carrie's extremely famous.
yeah,
for
maybe
its,
the first one for Friday the 13th, when like the jumping out of the boat. Uh, the thing too is that you expect them now, or even like now when I watch it, I'm actually bracing myself because
for
I
you hear
am.
Victor Miller's score coming on.
Yes,
And when she's
yes,
in the boat, it's really like
yes,
nice
yes,
and
yes,
tranquil.
absolutely. Or when there's no music at all, anytime somebody walks into a hallway and it's dark and there's shadows, so I prepare myself. I don't think I do have an iconic moment uh, with that, because, or maybe I just decided that it didn't exist or something like that. I don't tend to dwell on those things.
Yeah, I can think of the movie that's the jump scary movie that got you the most.
Which one?
It was Stage Fright. It was Michelle
Oh
Savage.
God,
Stage
yeah.
Fright.
Well, no, stage fright scared me shitless. Not it.
Like that. That
Oh
was.
God, yes.
Yeah, that's what like
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
the owl mask.
Yeah,
And the guy sitting in the chair at the end of the film.
Yeah,
So, like,
oh my God.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So
okay, so we're getting out of jump scares right now.
Yeah.
And introduce the next scare.
So the next segment we talked about, or the next,
Fear.
type of fear that might affect people, is faith-based fear. So we decided to call it faith-based fear
As
because
opposed to religion, because
it could be anything. It could be a belief. So it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be religious particularly. It could be cultural. It could be, but
Well, then
anything that's faith-based.
and like just to give an example of some of those, we can go anything from The Exorcist, Omen, to Serpent and the Rainbow, touching on Voodooism and like
Yes.
and some ones that don't work so well, like Exorcist 2, and no, there's a ton of them that don't work well, but Rosemary's Baby I think works really well, and that gets into a different one. We're gonna talk Rosemary's Baby at the end because it's gonna get into something else.
Yeah. So do you think that people are less scared today of faith-based?
No.
No? You think more?
I think the reason we have things like the Omen thing didn't last, but the Exorcist TV series, I think that it
So
comes
there's
around.
a resurgence of it, maybe?
Sort of. I mean, like you have to think of the times that it came out. Look at The Exorcist, for instance. The Exorcist. It's not just important to understand that The Exorcist was a huge hit, based about like religion done back in the 70s. But you also have to remember the time that it came out. The Exorcist premiered at Christmas. And if you really want to scare somebody with a faith-based horror film, then a lot of like especially like a lot of Western religions, especially, and even ones that aren't like you are not like I was raised Christian.
Yes.
But even if you weren't, you've seen Christmas specials. There's that that iconology is there, so it wouldn't scare you. It mightn't scare you as much. But I think Exorcist did scare you, doesn't it?
Well, and this is what's interesting about that. So I think when movies were done in the Western world. Most of these movies were done in North America or Europe, North America mainly.
The best ones were here.
Or,
But not for
whatever.
originals, but
It's
yeah.
the Western world.
Yeah.
But yes, so we obviously and they were done in the 70s, where I think there was a bit of it created, not, it didn't create, but there was a bit of a The Exorcist did quite a bit for that subgenre.
Oh, actually, did amazing things. The same as The Omen. Omen did great things for the thing.
Which are around the same time. All of these movies came out around, it's the same decade. So, you can analyze why. We're not going to get into that. But
well, actually, it's a little bit. It's slightly ironic that a decade, the decade that really showed like a lot of kind of religious horror, was a faith-based horror, was also the decade that America lost faith in the establishment. It was the whole like Nixon, Vietnam era when we didn't feel comfortable with our government, when we didn't feel good with what was going on, when people were tuning in, tuning
yes.
out, drop, the whole Timothy Leary thing.
Yeah, would you say? But still, I'm trying to think. What it came out at that time, for whatever reason,
because we were searching.
It spoke to something.
It spoke to the fact, like here,
because it needed to scare people. So obviously, it needed to attach to something that is primordial, in our psyche,
in that
or
time,
in North American psyche.
Put you this way. At that time, this is, we're gone past the 50s and 60s when the whole Red Scare, or whole Red Menace, and the scares are, and all of a sudden we don't trust our governments. We don't trust the people above us, and so what we've got left at that point is religion, is is our faith, whatever we believe in, and the horror film comes in at that point, and we can't trust our faith anymore either, because that's being attacked in cinema. Because all of a sudden, those things that were going to scare us with aliens and all that stuff, that's not that scary.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the early 50s, 60s, the invasion, the body snatchers,
Yeah.
the blob, stuff like that. Now we're.
See, I think that's more, like a mistrust in.
Well, I think that in a way, that's from
the Cold
before,
War
but and I think that's good. That's better for like more of a sci-fi type one, sci-fi horror type
Yeah.
one. But this, you got to look at the time that it came out.
Yeah.
And it came out this came out in the 70s. This came out during the time when, hey, we don't trust, we rebel against the man. We don't trust the man.
Establishment. Okay.
And yet we get this, like, these movies where you can't trust your religion either. And these became big again, like when Exorcism of Emily Rose came out, and not too long ago. In the
see, to me, it's a different. I interpret it differently.
It's cyclical.
And I see what it is, but I think it is. It is different because it's actually a test of faith. The way I see it, when you're looking, it's a return
to faith,
to God, because you've strayed and went and believed in, nothing. Because that's the thing, you lost your faith. That's pretty much the premise.
So you want to see like the false prophets type thing, maybe.
Or just loss of faith. I think it's to a certain extent, we've strayed away from God in whatever way you want to bring it.
But how does that work in The Exorcist when you think about it? Because we're not talking.
It's a loss of faith.
We're talking. We're talking about Reagan. And on the priest side, we got like the loss of faith and him coming back to eventually sacrifice himself to save the innocent.
But he only sacrifices himself when he actually accepts God again. You know what I mean? It's like he actually lost his faith. So don't, I don't forget about the priest. Put people, me, anybody else. So that's what plays on the fear. When it comes back to actual fear, what scares us is that maybe
I don't like this whole religious trying to get us back in.
What it is that maybe as a race, as a culture, as whatever you want, we have moved away from God. You see people who are, claim, not, don't have religions, they're atheists or believe in something that's more fluid as opposed to, an organized religion. And some people,
Agnostics.
there's many types, there's, we kind of strayed away from the mainstream religions, and that might create an environment where bad things or bad forces, can come in and corrupt that said person or group of people. And it is through, trials and tribulations and tests that you go through that eventually, when you accept again
Well, in The
that
Exorcist,
entity,
the faith wins. In movies like The Omen,
but
doesn't.
sometimes it doesn't. Then that's the thing. So, who knows? To talk, but that's what speaks. And if you look again at the fear, what would scare you? Because going and seeing that the little boy is evil and he's, I'm not Christian. We've already established that. Why would that scare me? It doesn't scare me because the actual mythology behind it is Christian, which, to a certain extent does.
That was more Catholicism with The Exorcist.
It doesn't matter. Again, so that's the thing. It doesn't matter. It still speaks to me because in my culture, there are certain aspects of it.
No, actually,
It's faith.
You would be more. Actually, you out of us, Exorcist would be more effective.
Oh, it scares the shit out of me. I don't, because again, my culture believes in that shit. So, we even being a very rational individual who is a scientist and a very rational person, deep inside, because of my upbringing, there might be aspects of that movie that would really, really affect me. Certain things I wouldn't do.
Now, for me, the first time that I watched The Exorcist, I was left a little like at the time. Now, that being said,
but how would an atheist still be scared of that? Would they? Would they not?
Would an atheist still be scared of The Exorcist?
Yeah.
Well, it can hit you on a different. Like, I'm not an atheist.
Yeah, but I'm asking the question. That's the thing. Is it only people who have some form of faith-based belief?
Even an atheist or an agnostic person does have a belief system. There's a belief system, and then they'll say no. There's no. But you believe something. Whether you may not believe in God, you may believe if you believe there's
exorcism
nothing. Would the Exorcist scare them?
Movie? I don't think
it didn't scare
so.
me. It didn't scare me when I was younger, and maybe it was because one, I saw it at an age when I probably really didn't grasp the whole concept of the film. Maybe it was because I wasn't so much. I was at a time in my life when I wasn't sure, like spiritually, where I was going to be, and it just didn't. That's cool, but
Okay, so it didn't scare you.
It didn't scare me.
Well, that's interesting. So is it a product of its time and a product of maybe the population that it's supposed to be impacting, and not everybody?
No. I think because when I saw it years later, I did find there are certain aspects of it that scared me more, and I find that as a dad, it scares me in a different way now. Seeing like Reagan and this kind of like move, I can relate more to the mother in The Exorcist now, and seeing the separation from her child who suddenly become alien to them. See, that aspect of it scares me more than the whole religious thing.
Which is another type of fear, which is separation. It's actually called that.
Yeah.
Which is the being separated from your loved ones.
But to be like just to say like an example, that's how The Exorcist scared me. The Omen.
Yeah.
Like I found scarier. The Omen scared I just on a level. But you know what really scared me?
Yeah.
Damien, The Omen 2. Remember that one?
Yes.
So I saw that movie. No, but here's the thing. I saw that movie when I was the age of the character Damien. I was going through a lot of the stuff, like the rebelling, the bullies at school type thing. I related to all that. I related so strongly to the Damien character. I'm like, holy crap, this really not any other character but Damien. Actually, Damien, the god, the evil guy, the guy that doesn't know he's evil. And And that one really is more when you think of it's shows religious aspects, but I really think that's coming of age because of when it was set.
Well, to me, I think I watched it. I was not that age. I watched it a little later, and to me, it comes to what has been done in other movies, which is children are usually taboo. One of the things that you don't play with too much because
But you
the
did.
innocence and all that. They're kids.
Well, let's face it.
They're not supposed to be evil.
Well, The Bad
And
Seed
this
was the
is
first example of that. It was a
yeah,
play that was made into a film,
yes,
but to show that, they actually had to have a scene at the end of the film where she kind of comes out and her
and
mom's
she's
there
fine.
and smacks her butt.
Yeah,
But kind of like that's kind of like, okay, look, this isn't real. Don't ride in the streets type of thing.
yeah.
But again, we're getting away from the whole religious aspect of that. And a much better, for me, like faith-based film, uh, that scared me at the time. It still scares me today. In a way, Serpent in the Rainbow. I don't know if you've seen that one,
Yes,
but
yes, I think I have. Yeah,
it deals with like voodoo, and
yeah.
I think maybe where that whole concept, the whole religious part, that it's more foreign to me. That I found that scarier. See with the loss of like when he's drugged, when he's in the coffin, when it's like he can't. He's in this foreign area. He can't control.
Well, so here it's basically being the outsider when you are, and I think Rosemary's Baby
Well,
is also kind of
outside,
like in between.
but
You're an outsider, or you are.
well, it's like, or you're one of us.
Uh,
That's a freaks joke from Todd Browning. But yeah, when an outsider. So getting into that, Rosemary's Baby was one of the ones that bothered a lot of people, and we were talking about it actually. And I said, "Is that?" She said, "Is that really kind of religious horror?" And she says, "That more?" And I mentioned like the paranoia aspect. I said, "Yes, because religion is steeped in paranoia." When you're watching Rosemary's Baby, I don't think that it was, uh, just a happy coincidence that all these were older, like kind of upper class, like type people. No, Roman Polanski was directly showing you the exact same people that you're going to see in your church, like every week. He wasn't showing you like the young, like swinging couples or like the mod people of London or anything like that. No, he was showing you these older couples, and he was showing you that for a reason. It wasn't just, and also, it it's great for the isolation aspect where she's younger, and her husband, played by John Cassavetes, is also like kind of a young, more urban, and they're kind of like in this area. But well, that's what you see. Those are the ones like they're judging you type of thing.
well,
And
it goes back to the again another type of fear that we feel. Uh, I guess it's even relevant or more so relevant today, is when you are the outsider coming into a community or a group or you know and everybody's different from you and you start seeing,
well, it's
rightfully so or wrongfully so, you start feeling uh, threatened by those differences. Or you can flip it around
which is what I was going
where
to say actually.
you are the there's a group of you are the community, and then there is a outsider that comes in that is different, that is also menacing. And I think there's a lot of movies that play on that fear, that and it's a fear
No,
that we all have.
there's a ton like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a great one when you
Yeah.
type of fear like that, and the original, and that still that runs along the whole like the Red Scare aspect, but it still runs along about being
Why
the
does it
outsider.
scare us? Does it scare you? Is it an effective?
For me,
Yeah.
the Philip Kaufman 1970s version scares me.
But I'm
Why?
talking about the type, not that particular movie, but
No, but that has to be put into
yeah.
place because of the fact that they work on the same similar concept, and during the 1950s, for instance, you definitely the Invasion of the Body Snatchers or I Married a Monster from Outer Space was another one that would work upon like that the fear. Other in the first one,
Yeah, of the
it's
era,
the fear.
but I'm talking
No,
of
no,
you.
but
Yeah.
I'm trying to get something.
Mm-hmm.
Is that basically in that you would be scared of being of being the one that's on the outside. Like here you got like Kevin McCarthy, and he's going around and nobody is who he thinks they are. Everybody that seems familiar to him is not familiar anymore. They're foreign, and they are foreign, and that's the aspect of being like that one person at that level. And in his mind, it gets to that one sane person, that one good person, and we don't know, like, because we're never told Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We know they're taking over bodies. We don't know that if this is like a race that came down and this is their survival method, and this is what they have to do, and they're not actually. We just know they're scary, they're evil, they're outsiders, they're foreigners, and that's what we see. That's the Red Scare. That's the foreigner, and I see when it comes to the I Married a Monster from Outer Space, then it's talking about, well, it's homosexuality. The men are being taken away from the women, and they're being drawn from another, like a different foreign aspect. And this time it's sexuality.
Mm.
So when you talk about like isolationism, when you talk about the fear of the foreigner, it can be like fear of like something that's foreign, like to you,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't just have to mean like when you say that normally, a lot of people think of the fact that it's going to be like it is actually legitimately somebody that's really different, somebody that looks different from you, somebody that that talks different than you, doesn't speak the same language as you.
But does it
But
scare
it does,
you?
yes, and it does in certain times. Did that one scare me when I was a kid? I found it extremely scary, but not for the aspect of the foreigner in that sense.
Mm.
It scared me because of something we're going to talk about later on, and that's loss of control within your environment.
Well, I'll go back. Rosemary's Baby scared me. Scared me a lot for a particular reason. Still, going into
Faith-based.
no,
No.
it was not the faith-based thing. It was the fact that that woman, which obviously to a certain extent you reflect yourself into
Mia Farrow's
into that her character. She was in a situation, again, being the only person who seemed sane, and she was losing her sanity with these people. It's like it's you're talking and you're talking, but they're not understanding, and not only that, they're convincing you that you're wrong, and that's you. And I think there's a lot of horror movies that play on women characters, on female characters, where something bad is happening, and you realize something is terribly wrong, and you're being told they're there. Uh, you're just imagining things. That's a scary feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that's what
You
plays
wonder
into
why.
it.
So you think that's done more female?
It has been,
But I think it has to be.
Why?
Because why does it have to be?
Uh-huh.
One, because
And be very careful what you
no,
say.
no. Not at all. Actually, I
Yeah.
should be careful what I say. Basically, one, because there's the there thing. Because it goes to basically and honestly, for part of it, it goes to that inner like sexism that's there.
Mm-hmm.
But more than anything else, here's the thing: if you there's like Kevin McCarthy is one of the examples like of like where it worked with a male actor, right?
Yeah.
And but there's always, but the thing is that with a lot of these films, and to be completely blunt, it doesn't work with the male lead.
Well, Hitchcock did it with, although it's not a horror movie.
No,
but...
he did. But every time Hitchcock had an everyman, there was always a girl to be put into danger, because at that time it wasn't just the girl that was put in danger; the guy was put in danger too. Now, when it came to like the man who what's the title to get that movie?
It was The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah.
The wife actually she's a saving one. She kicks butt. She's like a Olympics like champion. Yeah. But the thing is that you look at the film at the time, and you say, and when you see the girl running out the door, you get it, you get behind it. When you see the guy running out the door, you don't always. And
But coming back again, the type of fears is the threat of your sanity. That's scary. That's on a fundamental human
yeah,
way.
but
That
like I
that
mean, like the
scares
fact
me.
that you can't, like not, well, your mind.
Because it's your own mind, and if you're not sure of your mind, what are you sure of? So that's a type,
Well,
that's something that can be exploited in horror
well,
movies.
yeah,
That
that's why it's the internalization of fear. When there's no longer anything just outside, you you can internalize it inside. Uh, Movies like that. Can you think of another example of that?
that your sanity like that attacks your.
Like obviously the
Oh well, the first Nightmare on Elm Street really, to a certain extent, well ends up with the character
pretty much like
pretty much
well,
going
almost all of
crazy.
them, but
Yes, but that's the thing. It plays on that. Something is terribly wrong, and everything around you is telling you that it's not happening.
and the parents huge dicks.
Or
Yeah,
society
right.
and society. What are parents? Parents are a metaphor of the system. So it's basically telling you that the system is it's telling you that there's nothing wrong, and yet
That's there.
it is there, and you see it and you live it. But sometimes you lose that battle and conform. That's scary. That is absolutely, utterly
But terrified.
terrifying.
Yeah.
It would terrify me because you lose your identity as an individual uh, to something. So that's a good trigger, I think, for fear to
Definitely.
use, losing your identity or your sanity due
And there's
to
so many movies you see
outside
that.
influences. I think it's used in most of them.
But not just. But that's the thing is that some of the scary ones isn't like always too isn't always outside influence. Look at the Doctor Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Look at that whole genre of like and I'm gonna put it as almost like a subgenre of film, like basically where he takes the potion and like kind of unleashes that aspect of himself, and finds himself like spiraling out of control. Edge of Sanity with Anthony Perkins, for instance, is another one where they do that. Is where somebody that's very much in control, and it is a doctor, it is a scientist, it is somebody whose mind is very important to them, is where control and order is very important, and all of a sudden they've done something and they no longer have that, and it's the most terrifying thing to them.
Yes, it moves to what actually scares me the most, and you know, and I think has been widely used in horror, in different subgenres, and that is the theme of control. Um, we all try to, create some kind of control in our lives. You know, with society is, we try to, the world is chaos, and you try somehow to order it into something that's more uniform. Um, and one of, again, the primordial fear that we would have is the loss of that control. Uh, my nightmares,
Yeah.
outside of horror, uh, and I think it's probably the case for a lot of people. When you have a nightmare, whatever the situation is, you get to a point where it escalates. Whatever situation you're living or dreaming, it escalates and escalates and escalates, and get to a point where there is absolutely no way out. And that is your threshold as an individual, to be like, that's it, there's absolutely no way out. And that is the ultimate fear that you can have, when you have no way out.
That's
And
why
what does your body, well, you basically, what happens, you wake up
well, yeah, you hope
from that dream.
or you get egged, and it's like all of a sudden, which is the term that we use here,
Yes.
and where basically you can't move when you're
Yes,
kind of
it's
half
sleep
awake.
apnea and then someone. But in horror, we see that in
The zombie genre.
the zombie genre. You see that in home invasion horror.
Well, home invasion's out of control, but you think it's the same way though?
It is the same way, because you are in a situation where you are in your, what you feel is the most controlled environment, which is your home, your house, your family, and all that. And then you have an outside force that comes in and invades it, and you have absolutely no control over that because you don't know. They're unpredictable. So it's chaos that comes into your environment
But I think
that you can't control.
yes, but like when you say that, then like oh, and you got to work like even like a lot of the slasher films. They're the reason I think they put things like Friday 13th into the area that it's in is because all of a sudden they're in like this area that's foreign, it's kind of foreign to them, and they're just and there's nowhere to run.
Well, see that this is where I don't agree with slashers a lot of the time. They are made, and this is a flaw I think of your beloved slasher movies, in my opinion, is that the way they're filmed, due to the environment where they're in, it's sometimes very hard to believe that there is no way out. A lot of the times you can look at different situations, and people have talked about that. You have talked about that.
The car breaks down. You can't get the keys in.
You can, exactly and I do understand panic, and I do understand all of these things can happen, or could happen in real life.
But here's the thing, and
but
I think
it's a little too much. You don't go to the freaking woods on your own. You don't. No. There's situations that you shouldn't be getting into.
They do. No, people do go to the woods. People camp all the time.
Not
you may
me.
Not like camping.
No,
but
I don't
here's
camp.
the thing, and this is the thing where people make the biggest mistake when they say like, "Oh, but I wouldn't do that." Bull. You have no idea what you would do. Oh, I'd walk out the front door. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. In reality, if we hear something downstairs, we don't think, oh, this is just like a horror movie. There's somebody downstairs. You know what we do?
We go and look. That's absolutely
everybody.
You're
looks.
right.
It's human nature, and the things that these play upon. Of course, there's something downstairs.
In my defense,
yeah,
with these movies is that they already have. Well, they already have enough knowledge of the situation. Maybe not at the beginning, not the first kill, where they had no idea there's a monster.
But usually in those movies they don't. I mean, like that's the last 15 minutes of the film. Is all of a sudden there's a revelation. Halloween, for instance, she has no idea.
When you start seeing people croaking around you pack
don't.
up your bags and you go.
There's a reason why the final girl is called the final girl. It's because she doesn't see it, and when she sees it,
when people are missing, you pack your bags and you go.
In Halloween, their friend, or basically her friend, is supposed to be somewhere. Like you go on the concept that somebody is somewhere else. And Friday the 13th, for instance, it's a camp. They're young. They go off, and these people go off to have sex. These people go off to do stuff like that. By the time that you realize that, you know what? Oh, yeah, it may be too late. And each one of them, nobody there actually like just stands around and says, you know what? I guess everybody's disappearing. No, in Friday the 13th, actually, there's, for one, it's a perfect place for something like that. Because one, not only are they not in the same, they're not in the same house, but there's cabins. In each person is going off to their own cabin. They've already circumvented what you just said by having them in their own places. Why would they think, oh, this person's not there? Unless, one, in the middle of the night, you randomly got up and started knocking on everybody's cabin door, which is going to be as annoying as hell, and is not going to be realistic.
Well, there are holes.
Point for me.
Yes, no, I'll give you that. Points for slashers. Sure.
But let's get back to the whole like lost control thing.
Yeah.
Because I find that especially, and now the opening season, guys, if you haven't seen the first season episode, 7th season episode Walking Dead, I apologize because I'm about to mention something here. I know I can mention without actually saying.
If you have been on the internet, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But it's gotten darker. And here's a show that's pretty dark as this, but this show is getting really dark this season. And you want to talk about lost control? You saw an utter loss of control from Andrew Lincoln's character, from the main character Rick, in that episode. You actually got to watch it get stripped down.
Well, in honesty, the reason why I don't really watch that show is that the premise itself is and it's not the zombies particularly. It's being in a situation where you live in a world, that has threats all around you, and only threats it's too much for me to actually
Well, the brilliance of the show is that the
watch.
bad guys aren't the zombies, aren't really the zombies.
Everything.
It's just like the
It's everything. Is that here? What you say is basically you're lowering your threshold of threat from one
or
group to
raising it.
another. No, you're raising the living as being the most evil, and then they're all scary, and they're all going to kill you. It's just a matter of time.
Well, the thing is that the zombie, when you see that zombie in The Walking Dead, you know that zombie. You know they look like a zombie. They're
Yes.
scary. They're coming towards you,
Yes.
but and they're going slow, and you can go to places that can get you away from them. You can hold yourself off from them. But the thing that and the brilliance with shows like The Walking Dead and stuff like that is that it could just be like a Z Nation and just focus on zombies or something, but it doesn't. It focuses on the survivors and how
Well,
they
it just basically is a commentary on the human race.
all of
Is
the
that
zombie
it
films
is?
like that. It's like
Yes, they're all commentary on human race.
all
Just to
horror
say
films.
that we are a terrible, terrible species.
No, it's not saying we're terrible.
That's what
You're
it is.
so sad.
I am not.
You're the jaded person here.
On humanity, not horror, but yes.
No, it's I think we've talked what we can on the control part of it.
Well, to me, that's really what scares me the most. And that is
More
really
than
the reason.
clowns.
More than clowns. Well, segue monsters. That's Do they scare anymore?
Yeah, but the monsters have changed. I mean, like back in the 30s and 40s, we had the Universal monsters. We had the Frankenstein's, the Draculas in the 40s and 50s. We had like the 50s, basically the 50s and 60s. We had like the monsters were more science fiction oriented. There were the Godzillas, the tarantulas, stuff like that. In the 70s, we got to more. We started with zombies, and we got to more like realistic human monsters. Because monsters, monster, it's a relative term, but if you mean like monsters, as in like, does the lumbering monster?
But it's an entity
It's changed. I mean, like,
yeah.
obviously,
Well,
it made us
then
different. I mean, like,
slashers, slasher killers are
yeah,
monsters.
it's a human monster.
And
But
I think the '90s we saw serial killers being the monsters. So there's a lot of horror movie that came after that.
it's
That scares you.
horror is a serious, like, it's a funhouse reflection of what's going on in society at the time, and that's where you're seeing different type of stuff. And we're getting around again. It's coming back around to the '80s style of like horror. I'm finding now. Guys like Mike Flanagan who make movies like Hush and Oculus. So we got this like '70s, '80s style horror films that are being made right now because we're getting into that time again. That whole the '80s was a great time for horror because it was a very, you know, Reaganism, the whole aspect of it, that Thatcherism, all that breeds fantastic horror. And there's some great. I'm not going to get into that, but there's some great articles online that can talk to you about exactly why that era, that time period. And I'll do that in another video somewhere. Is such a great time. '80s is actually probably one of the best times for horror. '80s and '70s I find because the time and the mental, you know, things. Yeah, things started to and the fact is that here's the thing. Around the '70s, it started like cinema itself started to open up again. We were doing more. We're doing more stuff. We're doing like more edgy, I guess. What do you want to call edgy cinema? Cinema verite. You know, the whole like this great documentaries on decadent and the influence, all that type of stuff. and that continued like a decade of excess in the '80s, and the horror is definitely excessive. That's when like you got guys like Savini becoming like basically the rock stars of horror because you're with the gore concepts. And do monsters scare nowadays? Not the same type maybe. Obviously, we watched The Thing, like for instance, it was a scare. I find now more so if you see a monster movie, like the real monster movie, it's not so much a scary movie as it's suddenly become that gung ho action adventure type of film.
Well, I
like
think
Cloverfield came out, and that one didn't scare me
no.
at all.
See, here, I'll give you my theory. Monsters were popular. You went from the Universal monsters to the Hammer horror of the '60s, and even maybe the sci-fi stuff that happened in the 50s before,
Yeah.
and so on. That did scare people quite a bit. And then you move to the 70s, where you mentioned some
The monsters became more horror, where it became more homespun.
yes, and the 70s
Black
and
Christmas, for
80s.
instance, there was.
Yeah, but there were individuals. They still were a caricature of something. That they still were depicted as being monstrous, in physically monstrous.
I think.
And so they were iconic. That's why we still, people still have the Halloween mask, and Freddy's mask, and all. They're iconic visually. And then we moved into I think the 90s, where we dropped the mask, and started scaring. The monster became everybody, or anybody for that matter, and we started talking about serial killers
So you're
and
going into
things like
Silence of the
that.
Lambs and stuff like that, right?
Yes, where you actually they had, and they were normal. They were just like you and me, and you could not distinguish them just by passing by on the street until you actually see what horrors they did. And then, is that my hand going in?
Yeah.
Yep. And then after that, nowadays in the 2000s, it's a bit of a confusing time, because there is a comeback, and we've seen a lot of remakes of tons of movies,
Yeah.
where we tried, or we are trying maybe to come back into those iconic, or even creating, because there's a lot of original work, maybe not a lot, but some original
No, there are some great
work
original
of,
works.
but at the same time you still see that people are not as affected by the visual iconic horror character or monster character. There's a lot of complaints about, it's CGI, or the practical effects are not good. There's too much. I think we're not as naive as we were as an audience.
See, that started
to buy it. Well, maybe it did start
because
yeah.
here because all of a sudden like forget the internet, because that's not what did it. Basically, it's the Fangorias and stuff like that at the time that gave us the glimpse behind the scenes.
I don't think it's even that. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes beyond the fact that we evolved as a society to actually start seeing monsters for who they are, and monsters are us. They can be us, and we didn't need to actually put a mask on them to actually be scared of them. That's why it's such a difficult time for monster movies to work today, because that's not what's going to scare me. Actually having him holding a banner, which is what a mask is, or a deformity or something like that says, hey, monster here, I'm here, that actually doesn't work. But actually seeing a regular person, looking person coming in and attacking, that's what I don't expect, and that would freak me out even more. So I don't know what the monster genre can do, if not cheese. They are now bound, because we're not naive anymore. They're bound to just making cheese.
I think that whole
you have to be
tongue
in cheek in order to make a movie. You cannot make a serious, scary.
As a monster film, I don't know. No, I don't. Because there are, like we're going back to that now. Like, look at the Blair Witch, and which I didn't see. So I really can't talk on the new Blair Witch, and I was never big on the Blair Witch thing itself.
Well, to me, it's a one-off concept. I don't even know what they're gonna.
Well, look at like the Paranormal Activity movies and stuff like that. They just.
But they're not monsters.
But they are though.
No.
Well, because it's a ghost, it's not.
It's not a monster. It's not. There is no iconic thing. It could be anything. It's an entity. It's a thing with teeth, and there's nothing. It's not. It could be anything. It's actually when you see the monster is the release, because that's it. You saw it. You jumped. It's over. The scary part of these movies that you mentioned is that you don't know what the heck it is.
Well,
it's invisible.
Isn't that been since the beginning? Been like when the monster has worked best. Like once we've like put a face on the monster, no matter if it's a human face and or if it's like a mask.
But you needed to be scared, because that reveal when you saw it, and like, oh my god, everybody remembers, the 50s horror. the stills of that, what is, the Lon Chaney, it's not 50s, before that,
20s.
yeah, 20s, Lon Chaney,
London After Midnight, stuff like that,
yes,
and the movie actually isn't that, the character isn't that scary, but that it's a terrifying
it is
creature.
a terrifying thing, but it needed that. Today, it would not work. I really don't think so. It
Can't
would be
agree.
cheesy, and that's the result, is that all the monster
I just
movies
think it
now
changes.
is cheesy. Once there is a monster involved, same thing with the zombies. You start seeing, that's it, they're out there,
But then that doesn't, not really a sense of the monsters become. That's just people get desensitized to seeing something over and over again, the same thing. And I don't think that uh, it's that the monster has evolved into like just being us. I think that concept itself, like, hit its genesis in the 80s and went on into the 90s.
I just think we've evolved. We have
But
evolved in our scare, and we don't need.
I don't think we have. I think that anything as something like this is it runs in cycles, and we're going back. Like, we go back to certain things because certain things scare us at a certain specific time. We haven't really evolved because what we've done is we've just changed. We switched out something that scares us to something that scared us before.
Well, no, but look at the
In the
generation. Don't talk about me and you,
No, but I
who
mean,
are,
like, yeah, but still,
products of a
no,
different
okay,
time.
but here's the thing. You want to talk about like what scares. You want to talk about in like the 2000s. What was the biggest franchise in the 2000s? You know what that was? It was Saw, and that is very much uh, a guy with his puppet creature and a bunch of different like elaborate traps and stuff. That's the biggest selling franchise around that time. Saw, and after what came out right after that, Paranormal Activity. So those things, those basic like
But it's
inherent.
not a monster.
But that's the thing. What is what exactly is a monster? Are you going to qualify monster as just being like Frankenstein monster, or
You
what
can
about
go from
Henry?
Frankenstein,
What about Henry?
which is an oddity of the time.
In
That was an oddity. That it was a
Henry
very,
Portrait's
yes, and it
But
was a very unique film. See, Henry
but
would work perfectly today.
even before Henry, there was Maniac with Joe Spinell, and
But again, they were very, very, very small. That was not the predominant
it was
movement.
remade recently really well. With
Yes,
Elijah
that's what
Wood.
I say. It would work today. Because you know what? Elijah Wood is not the guy that you're going to be walking across the street and be like, oh my God, I need to run the other way around.
But Joe Spinell was. He did look kind of. He was an overweight guy, and he was like kind of that. It was
yes.
but it's meant to be like the slump. Like
But that's the thing. They're actually monsters that look like you and me. And that is scarier to us, to millennials, than it is I'm coming to get you.
Taking the phone away scared me.
Huh?
Taking the phone away scary to millennials. But
But you know what I mean. You have to admit.
Let's face it. The monsters that we're seeing now are on the small screen, and they're the Walking Dead. They're the monsters there, and yes, they're zombies. Zombies are the prevalent monster, and they don't come across as cheesy.
But like you said it again, they're less scary and less threatening than a regular-looking human being. I win.
You don't win.
Yes.
But you do have a good point. Yeah, you have a great point actually. But no, I love.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't love monsters. I love monsters in movies, and that's what actually I can handle. But the reason why I can handle them is because they're not as scary as other things.
Sharknado.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Piranha.
We don't have that. If you have a monster today, it is going to be a cheesy movie. So
okay, then let's say that. Listen, then right now, what scares you the most? If I said I'm going to put on a horror movie, and what type would like make you tense up? If I said we're going to watch this.
God, so many things. Anything that actually has to do with loss of control. So I don't watch, rapey stuff because I am a woman. Well, like all of the Day of a Woman and all that stuff. I can't. I seriously cannot handle the situation where again there's a loss of control. You are being overpowered by in those cases, men who violate you and so on. You can't help but actually identify with the protagonist. That's the whole point. That's what makes a great movie.
Yeah, well,
So I cannot actually do
in the
that.
case of that one, the other woman, or I Spit in
And
Your Grave, is more
even
like,
if she gets her revenge at the end, it's not enough. And again, it's I go consciously into these situations and I evaluate the pros and cons of me going into these movies. The payoff of her getting her revenge doesn't, it actually does not outweigh the emotion that I feel or I would feel watching her being abused. So
you can't take it.
I can't take that. So I don't watch it. I don't watch movies that have situations
Well, ironically,
like zombies and stuff like that where I would lose control in a situation. They're very uncomfortable for me.
well, I think it's
Home
not
invasions, another one that I don't like.
with with I Spit in Your Grave. I think the whole aspect behind that one, and I think that's a brilliant film, was that the guy that made the film came across somebody that he helped somebody that had just been raped, and that feeling of like the way that she was treated and the powerlessness that he felt at the time, like brought out this film.
And I'm not taking
bloody brilliant.
anything away from I'm not getting into the debate of is it misogynistic or not. That is absolutely not. We're talking about situations. If I'm paying money or I'm buying a DVD or accepting to watch a movie with you, or declining, I should say.
Accepting.
No, declining. These are movies that I would not be comfortable watching. I know.
And then that's not even in the. We're not even talking. That's not always horror genre. With like Death Wish, for instance, that's another one that does have like the.
Yes, no, I don't like those things.
But for me, what personally scares me?
Yeah.
It's hard to say now. Like what really scares me now. So much from before. And it's not that I'm not scared. Definitely, there's lots of movies that still scare me, but a lot of the things that scare me are things that scared me all the time. That's always scary, and they still scare me. The slasher movie, there's certain aspects of that do that I do find scary. Ghost stories scare me. Like not all, but stuff like The Changeling is scary. And the big joke about The Changeling is like what scares in George C. Scott. Well, but it is. It's that it's the for me, yeah, definitely the Lost Control. I am an epileptic, and Lost Control, obviously, lost. But for me, a lot of body horror and stuff. The aspect
mutilation and things like that.
no, not so much the mutilation aspect of it, but a lot of Cronenberg stuff, like not being able to like.
They treat mutilation, body mutilation. A
lot. Yeah,
but
not like the early stuff, like the Shivers and the Rabbit, were basically
treat of mutilation, I believe.
No, Shivers is basically like, it's almost like it's right now if they remade it, and I think they are remaking it. Is a great thing for like a great thing for like sexually transmitted disease and stuff like that. Basically, Lynn Laurie's character, like her, there's this like little slug-like creature that goes from that, and the people lose control of who they are. They are no longer them. There's like this huge like bloody orgasmic type society. It's not zombies, but it's just really different, and that I found that really scary. And it's in this like this secure apartment building like of the future, I guess, type of thing where you're supposed to be safe, where this building has been made for your safety, and everybody around you has been like and they're not eating your brains. They're coming at you naked. There's like, but they're changing. They're not the person that they were. That type of stuff still scares me. From being a kid watching Something Invasion, Body Snatchers, that stuff still, Philip Kaufman version especially, still scares me. Hush. Recently I watched that, and I don't know if it scared me so much, but there's one sequence in it that I think is a very brilliantly scary sequence, and it's been debated in the horror community. He has a great mask. He has a fantastic mask. And this will like go towards your point, by the way. She can't hear. She goes there, she can't talk, and she writes on the window, "I haven't seen your face. Boyfriend's coming home. You can go. I'm not going to tell anyone." And at that point in the film, some people were, "Oh, I can't believe they did this. That's totally ruined it." He takes off his mask, and
That's more impact as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, because of the fact that she has seen him now.
So he
She
took
knows.
some of her control out.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
And not only that, but now she knows there's no way
Yeah.
this person is going to leave.
So he took another, she already has lost control from the beginning by being disabled, by not being able to hear. There's the isolation aspect that she is somewhere by herself. But then the last part is completely, this is where the character has her back against the wall, where there's absolutely no way out because now she actually knows what he looks like.
Yeah.
So
it's brilliant. And Mike Flanagan just recently did, and I want to see this one actually, Ouija Origin of Evil, which apparently is an amazing sequel to a movie that wasn't very good. But as soon as I heard his name was attached to it, I had no doubt it was going to be good. That's the guy that went to do Halloween, by the way. So there we go. That has been fear. Types of fear in the horror film. I think we did, well, you did a pretty good job, but I just went along the way. But hope you guys enjoy. This is something very different. Let me know if you'd like to see more stuff like this. We actually talk about aspects behind cinema and behind film, and just get into different topics. We can do different genres, talk about different aspects of it, and look, because if I am going to continue to have the people still call me the movie professor, well, every once in a while we got to get that academic with it, and that's my favorite thing in films. By the way, I love features. We just sat down here and watched Dead of Night, the 75-minute documentary. Now, amazing. And so when I was going to make a video tonight, I wanted to make something that was going to have a bit of substance to it. That was going to be a bit challenging, and could open up a discussion among anybody that watches this at home with the people that they're with, or here right on right down below, or even if you make videos and you want to do a response video, what scares you, and why it scares you. Not just clowns scare me, or I'm scared of the flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz, but why? Why does that aspect scare you? Why does the clown scare you? Is it the stranger? Is it the painted face, the not knowing, or is it something maybe that's more inner, more primal? Are you scared of the unknown, of the person across the road with the hoodie on that you can't quite tell who they are? The best horror came from that. Wes Craven was a young kid looking out a window, saw this scary looking dude looking back at him, and Nightmare on Elm Street came from that. Fear is a crazy thing. But it's a fun thing. If we didn't have fear, I wouldn't have all these movies here that I love so much. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, guys. Now, go get scared. It's one of the most fun things you can do. Thanks for staying for the after credits sequence. I really want to thank everybody that stayed and watched this video and opened up their mind to actually looking into cinema in kind of a different way. Obviously, in this one here, it wasn't me showing off a different company or a specific video that I had or that I owned. I wanted to go into something different. When we first started doing this, we thought about doing a list of some of the top ones of each of the fears, and I wanted to get away from that for this video and actually just talk to you guys, and I'm just start a conversation, get a dialogue going, and really get into the root of of scares, and would have been impossible to do without my fantastic better half. So I want to thank her so much for that, because it is great to have that sounding board, and she knows her stuff. Even if we don't always agree, she definitely does know her stuff on this stuff here. And I want to thank you guys so much again for watching. For me right now, it's time to say that famous tagline. That's very good. That's going to be very, very true right now, because it's been an hour, and I didn't expect this video to go on for longer than 15 minutes, but I'm actually glad it did. It's time for tea.